RC Truth Media. Today we're going to be going over the science of global warming and global cooling. Now, a lot of people are just watching videos and not knowing the science about it, okay? Which we really should. Global warming is a flawed science. They go by computer models, okay? And in those models, they a lot of times are biased. They put the information that they believe to be right, just like Democrats, and a lot of the Republicans are even biased as well. Let's face it, there's biasness in our feelings towards things, okay? Now, that's what they do in global warming. They go off these computer models and what they think happened. Now, global cooling community actually goes off facts. What facts do they go off of? Now, let's check this out. It says, in reviewing the various data analysis approaches, there seem to be two basic approaches as being used today. Computer projection models, which can be subtly biased or grossly manipulated according to their input, such as those used by the United Nations scientists of the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and Mr. Al Gore himself, and that's one of them. The computer models, which can be biased, and there's number two, historical observation models based on actual global temperature, sunspot measurements, Earth Sun gravitational distance patterns, ocean water levels, ice core analysis, and patterns of temperature change in global surface and water over thousands of years. Okay, so that's two completely different ways of doing research. One, computer based model, projection models, which can be manipulated, such as the United Nations scientists, and two, historical observation models based on actual global temperature, sunspots, measurements, Earth Sun gravitational distance patterns, ocean water levels, ice core analysis, and etc. Okay, over the thousands of years. With the sun's surface becoming progressively quiet, meaning less sunspots since 1998, the monthly sunspot patterns and weather at this time in history, which was last year, are most similar to those of 1797, a time preceding the Dalton Minimum, global cooling temperatures of 1793 through 1823, which was a mini ice age. The historical science of global climate change reveals itself in relative cyclic macro patterns rather than a linear one-time pattern, such as Gore's proposed linear pattern of increasing global warming, secondary to industrial age influences. The Milankovitch theory, also known as de Vries, Suess, or Gleisberg cycles, describes the cyclic variations of Earth's orbital and rotational motion parameters in cycles of up to 120,000 years. However, the M theory can't help us understand the shorter climate cycles, like the ones lasting from 2,000 to 10,000 years, nor does it consider the cycles of the Little Ice epochs, ranging from 2,200 to 2,400 years, or climate oscillation patterns of 206 years. The bicentennial cycles, with durations of 206 years, have normal global temperature changes of about 0.5 to 1 degree Celsius, such as the global warming cycle we have just passed through. Currently, there's much evidence that the 2200 to 2400 year cycles and the other relatively shorter climatic cycles are all caused primarily by sunspots and the sun's and Earth's slight movements toward and away from each other. It is documented that these cycles existed thousands of years before the Industrial Age and are fundamentally independent of the Industrial Age. According to historical cyclic observation, it appears that Industrial Age man-made CO2, on which the Gore theory is based, has negligible impact on both global warming and cooling cycles. On a psycho-spiritual level, the Gore theory is faulty, not only because predictions have not come true, but it's deeply egocentric, and thus not in harmony with the cycles of God's natural creation. An increasing group of astrophysicists, geophysicists, and paleoclimatologists has studied the role of the sun in climate change. This includes the role of numbers of sunspots, as well as variations in distances from the Earth over time. Sunspots, depending on whether increasing or decreasing, correlate with periods of global warming and global cooling, respectively. Since 1998, a relatively long-term downward trend in solar sunspot activity has already started, and it will inevitably cause a corresponding climate cooling, similar to the Dalton Minimum, of extreme global cooling temperatures that occurred around the mini ice age of 1815. The cooling may be as much as 0.7 to 0.8 degrees Celsius. Some project, based on historical evidence of previous mini ice ages, that this drop may come on a suddenly rather over time. During the past 110,000 years, there has been at least 20 abrupt climate changes. Historical records show us that abrupt climate change is not only possible, it is the normal state of affairs. The overall historical cyclic data strongly suggests that the beneficial growth producing cycle of the present global warming has ended, and a new and destructive cold climate is beginning. Members of the Russian Academy of Sciences have stated openly in as early as 2007 that we are entering a new little ice age. This ice age discussion and prediction is the main point and concern of this essay. The well-documented scientific analysis of the outstanding intellect and scientist John Casey, who worked in high levels of NASA, has documented in his book Dark Winter a useful overview and convincing detail of the cycle theory of global warming and cooling. John Casey has developed a descriptive theory on this that he calls relational cycle, the RC theory. I like the RC theory because I'm RC Truth Media and this is the RC theory. Okay, it says RC theory postulates climatic and geological manifestations on the Earth are primarily the result of solar changes and sunspots. The RC theory, which has been about 90% accurate, contrary to the theory of man-made global warming, otherwise known as anthropogenic global warming, aka climate change, based on human greenhouse gas emissions, contrary to the RC model's accuracy, every projection of the Gore AGW has been consistently disproven and inaccurate. The AGW is the global warming. The key is the RC theory is based on historical data cycles rather than linear man-made global warming computer models. Casey's relational cycle postulates three basic points. Global warming ended in 1998. The sun hibernates about every 206 years. This solar hibernation is marked by a historic and cyclic reduction in the sun's energy output and number of sunspots, resulting in a relatively long-term drop in human lifespan in the Earth's average temperature. RC theory predicts a global cooling, mini ice age climate change beginning around 2019 through 2020, peaking in 2030, and moving toward warming again in 2053. It is this mini ice age cooling prediction that could be disastrous for the unprepared and is the main teaching point of this essay. Based on the RC theory and the observations of a growing number of climate scientists around the world, it would appear that the most reliable source for climate change prediction is the number of sunspots varying in 206-year bicentennial cycles. The last solar minimum, marked by a low number of sunspots, occurred between 1793 and 1830. That solar minimum included 1816, otherwise known as the year without a summer. I've detailed this before. This was close to the time that Napoleon, without consulting his local climatologist, attempted to invade Russia during the coldest part of this cycle, which is the Dalton Minimum, around 1812 to 1816, and consequently was literally frozen out. It is estimated that 400,000 of his 600,000 men army died from the cold and starvation. The following graph outlines the variation of sunspot numbers from the year 1600 to the year 2000. Fewer sunspots are directly associated with reduced global temperatures. The Dalton minimum in the early 1800s is associated with the lowest number of sunspots. The global cooling from 1650 to 1700, called the Maunder minimum, is also directly related to a low number of sunspots. This next sunspot graph, figure B, illustrates the changing cycle of sunspots over time, preceding the mini ice age of 1793 to 1830. Obviously, none of these climate changes, either global warming cycle in 1780 and cooling in 1815, had anything to do with the industrial influences, as there was no significant industrial pollution at those times in history. Presently, there's serious and increasing scientific convincing verification for the validity for the validity of global historical cyclic approach to understanding the global cooling and warming cycles we're presently living in. This is important to understanding that this predicting cooling cycle from 2019 to 2053 is one marked by a decline in warming data and a rise in cooling evidence data, and confirming scientific peer-reviewed papers. For example, John Casey found 73 researchers and over 40 peer-reviewed papers or publications that supported all or parts of the elements of his RC theory, and consequently the high probability of a soon-to-be global cooling cycle. This included 16 scientists who predicted this coming cold era. Additionally, 18 researchers and 11 scientific papers supported the existence of the centennial cycles. 17 researchers and 8 papers supported bicentennial cycle theories. 11 researchers and 8 papers supported both cycles found together, and so on and so forth. The point is that the basis of the RC theory predictions of global temperature cycles and the coming global cooling evolves from a variety of extensive climate research efforts by independent researchers. A more recent confirmation of the independent cooling cycle was released on January 25, 2011, when NASA released data that confirmed solar hibernation. Dramatic increase in sunspots was happening as predicted by John Casey. In press release 2011, the SSRC, Space and Science Research Corporation, announced that the 4-year effort of its director, John Casey, to convince the scientific community, the U.S. government, the media, and the public that a solar hibernation is coming was substantiated. The expected approximately 34-year global cold era that follows these solar hibernations was also validated by their data. This was further validated on February 4, 2011, when the SSRC issued press release February 2011, which indicated that the next phase of global cooling had begun, marked by a record drop in Earth's ocean temperatures, relying on NASA and NOAA satellite measurements, and preceded by other government contracted organizations. The SSRC press release made note of the new record steep drop in ocean temperatures, supporting its May 10, 2010 forecast for a record global temperature reduction. If you would like to go ahead and finish this, I'm going to go ahead and let you. There's only a little bit left. There's actually a lot left. There is so much here to read. And I did this because some people were asking me about the science and they wanted more proof. And I did find a very good article that shows a lot, basically what you need to know. So I'll go ahead and throw this link down and you can check it out yourself. Thanks for coming and checking out RC Truth Media. Please like and subscribe, and you have a great weekend.